I never thought I'd be erased from my own life, but when I saw my own obituary, I knew something was terribly wrong. This is my fight to reclaim what's mine. Welcome to today's story, but before we dive in, I'd love for you to help me reach 1,000 subscribers soon. Your support means the world to me and gives me the motivation to keep bringing more interesting stories to you. Thank you so much. Now let's jump into today's story. Our character faces a situation that might seem impossible to overcome. Have you ever been in a place where you felt erased from the world? Where your family abandoned you and your identity was wiped out both physically and digitally? Today, we'll follow the journey of someone who was forced to live as a ghost in their own life. Let's see how they face this overwhelming challenge and fight to reclaim what was lost. Stick with me until the end to see how they find the strength to rise again. It was a typical Thursday morning when I was jolted awake by the ping of my phone. At 9 a.m., I was sitting in my apartment, wrapped in a blanket, sipping the second cup of coffee for the day. My routine was interrupted by a video message, a video from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Alyssa, an old neighbor, had sent me a short clip with no greeting or explanation. The message itself was simple yet chilling. "I'm so sorry about your parents. I can't believe what I saw today." I froze. My heart dropped. What did she mean by that? I knew Alyssa. She had been a close friend of mine when I was younger. But I hadn't heard from her since I left home years ago after everything fell apart. The feeling of dread crawled up my spine as I tapped on the video, expecting some sort of explanation. The video began in a church, St. Mark's, a familiar place from my childhood where I used to go with my family on Sundays. The camera zoomed in, slowly revealing figures standing at the altar, and there they were, my parents, looking like strangers in this grim, solemn place. My mother was there, dressed in black, her face contorted in exaggerated sorrow as she dabbed her eyes with a tissue. My father stood stiffly beside her, clutching the microphone, reading from a piece of paper. Behind them, there was a large casket, and next to it, a photo of me, a smiling photo from a time I barely remembered. What I saw was surreal. This couldn't be real. I was alive. I was sitting on my couch, breathing, alive, and yet, here they were, declaring me dead. My father's voice rang out from the video, his words cutting through the air like a knife. "She was always a troubled one, but we did what we could. She left us too soon, but we pray her soul finds peace." My stomach twisted. This was a eulogy for someone who hadn't even passed away. I wasn't dead. I hadn't even been informed about any of this. I replayed the video over and over, trying to process what was happening. Each time, it felt colder, more distant, as if I was watching someone else's life. Couldn't wrap my head around it. Why would they do this? Why would they pretend I was dead? Why hold a memorial service for me, announce my passing in front of all those people, without so much as a single call to check if I was okay? They hadn't spoken to me in years. Not since that fateful day they kicked me out of their lives, told me I was no longer their daughter. The video played on, the camera slowly zooming out from the casket. I could barely breathe. The shot shifted to the mourners. Distant relatives I hadn't seen in years, family friends I barely remembered, even my childhood piano teacher, who had taught me to play Chopin's nocturnes when I was a little girl. Everyone in that room, everyone who used to be a part of my world, was dressed in black, and they all seemed to be crying over a life they thought had been lost. But none of them knew the truth. None of them had even tried to reach out to me. Not once. Not a single call. No texts. No letters. Nothing. As the video ended, I felt a cold chill crawl up my spine. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't some kind of sad misunderstanding. This was deliberate. This wasn't just them deciding to mourn me like any normal family might after a loss. No, this was a calculated erasure. They had decided to write me out of their lives. Completely, like I had never existed. I leaned back, the weight of everything pressing down on me. My mind spun, fragmented thoughts swirling around in a dizzying dance. I tried to make sense of it, but the truth started to piece itself together, jagged and painful. 3 years ago, I was accused of something I didn't do. Something that had destroyed my relationship with my family, ruined my life, and shattered everything I thought I knew about myself. It wasn't me. I wasn't the one who stole the money. Jessica, my younger sister, the one everyone adored, the so-called golden child. She was the one responsible. Jessica, the girl who could do no wrong. The one who always got away with everything. She had been embezzling money from our family's business for months. No, for years. Nearly $100,000. That's the sum I later found out. She was living far beyond her means, throwing lavish parties, buying expensive clothes, traveling to Europe like she had no cares in the world. I had no idea where the money had gone until it was too late. By the time the numbers didn't add up, by the time the company's finances were in chaos, they needed someone to blame. And guess who they chose? Me. I was the perfect scapegoat. I was the one who'd always been a bit of a black sheep in their eyes. The one who didn't play by their rules. The one they could discard when it suited them. That fateful day, the words my mother hissed at me cut deeper than any knife ever could. I could still hear them echoing in my mind. Better one ruined daughter than two. Couldn't believe it. How had we come to this? My mother, the woman who had always told me she would love me no matter what, was now saying I was the reason our family was falling apart. I was the one who had ruined everything, the one who could no longer be part of their world. My father didn't even look at me when he said it. The words were cold, final. You embarrassed us. You're no longer our daughter. His eyes were flat, his expression hard. No compassion, no empathy, nothing. Just cold, hard dismissal. I could feel the air around me grow thin as I stood there, paralyzed. The next morning, I was gone. Just like that. No goodbye. No explanation. They didn't even give me time to pack my things. They threw me out like trash, cut off from everything I had ever known. My world collapsed in an instant, and I was left standing on the outside, looking in. I remember walking out of the house for the last time. I didn't even bother to look back. I knew if I did, I'd only see their backs turned to me, rejecting me as they had for so long. They erased me from their lives like I never existed. I tried calling them, of course. I called my mother's cell, then my father's, then even the home phone. No answer. I sent text messages, left voicemails. Nothing. Blocked. I tried to reach out to family friends, people who had always been so kind to me, people who had been like family. But when I did, one by one, they disappeared too. They didn't respond. They didn't care. They never even asked where I was. They just erased me too. It was like I had never been a part of their lives. I even contacted old classmates, friends from high school, people who had once been my closest allies. I figured maybe, just maybe, they would remember me. But they didn't. They didn't even know what to say. They all acted like I was dead, as if I had never mattered in the first place. I was a ghost to them. And the worst part? I didn't know what hurt more. The fact that my family had abandoned me, or the fact that the world seemed to follow suit. What hurt the most was that I had always thought I would be able to come back home. That one day they would realize the mistake they made. That they would reach out and tell me they were sorry. That somehow we could all make things right. But that day never came. The silence stretched on. Days, then weeks, then months passed, and I became more and more invisible. No calls, no letters, no apologies, no acknowledgement. It was as if I had never mattered to them in the first place. I had been replaced by someone else. And that someone wasn't even real. It was the version of me they had decided to create to protect themselves. The daughter who was obedient, who didn't cause trouble. The daughter who had never dared to question them, who had always been quiet and compliant. That was the version of me they held on to. The perfect daughter. But it wasn't me. It wasn't me at all. And all the while I watched from the shadows, waiting, wondering how long they would get away with their lies, wondering if I could ever get back what they had stolen from me. My life, my identity, my place in the world. I thought about the day I left the house, the way I was tossed out like nothing, without a second thought. And I thought about how my father, the man who had always been my rock, had turned away from me. How my mother, The woman who had once held me in her arms and whispered that everything would be okay, had completely abandoned me. And then I thought about Jessica, the golden child, the one who was always the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. She had taken everything from me, and I would never forget it. Knock knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story, but before that, make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. I had no choice but to leave. The weight of my family's betrayal crushed me, and there was nothing left for me in that city. I packed my bags, changed my number, moved across the country, and started over. I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood and a low-key job at a coffee shop. I lived a quiet life, stayed off social media, and kept my distance from anything that might remind me of the past. I thought that if I kept my head down, maybe, just maybe, I could start over, find a new version of myself, one free from the ghosts of my old life. But deep down, I always held on to hope. Hope that someday someone would care, someone would reach out to me, say they were sorry, that it had all been a mistake. I didn't expect them to come running back, begging for forgiveness, but a small part of me hoped for at least a phone call or a message. I wanted someone to acknowledge my existence, to tell me that I hadn't been erased from their lives, that I still mattered. But that day never came. Instead, something even worse happened. Last year, I tried to renew my old email account. I needed it to access some personal documents, things I had stored away before the world had turned upside down. It had always been my lifeline to the past. I figured I'd update it with my new address and phone number and start reconnecting with some old contacts. I clicked on the login page, entered my username and password, but it wouldn't let me log in. I tried again, thinking maybe I mistyped the password. Still nothing. Frustrated, I contacted customer support. The conversation went like this. "Hi, I'm having trouble logging into my account. Could you help me recover it?" The response came back almost immediately. "Thank you for contacting us. Upon review, we regret to inform you that your account has been deactivated due to a report of user decease. The system automatically marked your account as inactive. If you believe this to be an error, we recommend contacting our support team for further verification." I sat there, stunned, staring at the screen. Decease? Was this a mistake? Surely, someone had reported me as dead by accident. But as I thought about it more, a sick realization began to settle in my stomach. This wasn't just some error in the system. No, this was part of something bigger. They had erased me, completely. They hadn't just cut me off from their lives. They had gone a step further. They had removed me from the digital world as well. My email account, my online identity, everything that tied me to my past, was now inaccessible. And that's when I knew. They didn't just want me gone from their lives. They wanted to make sure I was gone from everyone else's too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, the feeling of hopelessness and rage gnawing at me. The video from Alyssa kept playing in my mind, on loop. My own funeral, my own obituary, a life that had been snatched away without my consent. But the worst part? No one even tried to contact me, not once. I had been erased without a trace. I couldn't live with the thought of them doing this to me, and I couldn't just sit around waiting for someone to fix it. I had to take action. I started digging. I picked up my phone, dialed the number I had blocked out for so long. Sarah, my aunt. She was my mother's older sister, and when I was a child, she used to sneak me candy at family reunions and listen to my complaints about school. She was the only one who had ever shown me kindness when things got rough in the family. But that had been years ago. We hadn't spoken since I was cut off. Still, I had to try. I had to hear the truth, even if it meant facing the silence. It rang a few times before she picked up. "Aunt Sarah." "It's me, Lena." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, to my horror, the call ended abruptly. My heart skipped a beat. Had she hung up on me? I called again, my fingers trembling. Blocked. Couldn't believe it. Blocked. After everything, after the years of being abandoned, this was the final straw. She was supposed to be the one who would help me. She was supposed to care. But she didn't. I tried my cousins next. The ones who used to be my closest friends, the ones who had known me my whole life, the ones who I thought might still remember me. The first one I called didn't even pick up. The second one, a younger cousin, texted me back a simple thumbs-up emoji. That was it. No words, no questions, no apology, just an emoji. I was crushed. No one believed me. They had all been swept into the lie. They had all been complicit in my erasure. But then one person responded differently. Sam, my younger cousin, the one who used to look up to me when we were kids, the one who always had my back. He hesitated at first, but eventually he texted me back. Lena, are you really alive? I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but the pain came rushing back as I typed my reply. Yes. What did they tell you? His response shattered me, and I couldn't breathe for a moment. They said you died in a car crash 3 years ago. They said it was too late to bring you home for the funeral, and they cremated you. There it was. The story they had spun to cover up their lies. A car crash. A car crash I had never been in. I didn't even own a car. There was no accident, no funeral, no closure. Just a lie. A fabricated narrative they had crafted to bury the truth. And the worst part? They had gone so far as to forge my death certificate. I felt sick. My hands trembled as I held the phone. My family had not only abandoned me, they had tried to erase me completely. But they didn't get away with it. Not yet. I was still here, and I was gonna fight back. I had my answer. They hadn't just erased me from their lives. They had erased me from the world itself. They made me legally dead to hide their actions, to cover up their shame. But now I was going to take everything back. All the years they thought they'd stolen from me, all the memories they buried under a lie, everything was mine to reclaim. The next day, I walked into a law office, carrying a stack of documents. Passport stamps, employment records, tax filings, everything I needed to prove I was still alive. I could feel my pulse quicken as I handed the folder across the desk to the young attorney who sat across from me. His eyebrows furrowed as he flipped through the papers, confusion crossing his face. He looked up at me, disbelief in his eyes. "You're challenging your own death?" he asked, wide-eyed. "I'm not dead," I said firmly, my voice unwavering. "But I plan to haunt them." There was no turning back now. The weight of what I was about to do hit me all at once. For so long, I had been a shadow, a ghost in my own life. But I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. I wasn't going to be erased. I was going to make them face the truth. And if it meant dragging it all into the light, so be it. We started the process to file a complaint for fraud and a motion to revoke the declaration of death. The legal hurdles were daunting, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was fighting for something that mattered. I wasn't just fighting for me, I was fighting for the truth. But the real fight began when I received a message from an anonymous number. It was simple, no context, just a short line of text that made my blood run cold. "They're holding a memorial for you next Sunday at St. Mark's, the church, the same one where I had spent so many holidays with my family. Sitting in the pews, pretending everything was normal, pretending that love still existed in that house. And now they were going to hold a memorial for me, as if I was some distant memory, something to be mourned and forgotten. I knew what I had to do. That Sunday, I stood in front of the church, wearing a black coat and sunglasses, hidden in plain sight. The air was sharp, the kind of cold that cuts through you no matter how many layers you wear. It felt like the world was holding its breath as I stood across the street, watching the cars pull up one by one. People dressed in black, their faces somber. The church was full, the pews lined with mourners all there to pay their respects to a woman they thought was dead me. But I wasn't dead, not by a long shot. I waited, watching them as they filed into the church, a mix of familiar and unfamiliar faces, all there to mourn my passing. I couldn't help but feel a strange detachment, almost like an observer of my own funeral. There was no anger in my chest, no desire for vengeance at this moment. There was just clarity. I knew exactly what needed to be done. As the service began, I slowly made my way to the church doors. The tall, heavy oak doors creaked open with a sound that echoed through the room like a drumbeat. The organ played softly, and the priest began his eulogy. My father's voice rang out through the speakers, filling the room. He spoke about me as though I were a ghost, a tragic figure whose life had been cut short. The words he spoke were so carefully chosen, so rehearsed, as if he had spent the past 3 years perfecting this narrative. I could hear the rehearsed sorrow in his voice. She was troubled, but we loved her, he said. She lost her way, but we always prayed that she'd come back to us. And then, at the exact moment they were about to hold a moment of silence for me, I stepped forward. I pushed open the door fully, walking into the church as if it were my own stage. The room went completely still. Everyone gasped. Their faces went pale, their eyes wide with disbelief. My mother's body dropped to the floor as if she'd practiced fainting for years. It was all so perfect, almost too perfect. Jessica froze, her pearls clutched tightly in her hand, her lips trembling. It was like watching a well-rehearsed play unravel in real time. I didn't speak a word. I didn't need to. The truth was already loud enough. My presence was the truth. The proof. The priest took a step back, stunned into silence. I looked at my father. His face was blank, like a man who had been caught in a lie too big to cover up. My mother lay motionless on the floor, her breath shallow, but the panic in her eyes was unmistakable. Jessica looked at me, and I could see the fear in her eyes, the realization that the truth she had so carefully hidden for so long was finally being exposed. The room was paralyzed. I stood there, not saying a word, but letting the moment wash over me. And then I spoke, my voice calm, but strong. "I'm not dead," I said, looking at each person in the room. "I'm here to correct the story." The silence that followed was deafening. I pulled out my documents, one by one, and laid them on the pulpit for everyone to see. There were my passport stamps, my employment records, my tax filings. Evidence that I had been alive all along, living a quiet life while they had lied about me. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to shout or make a scene. The truth was already on display, and so were the lies. The funeral wasn't a farewell. It was a cover-up. My family had orchestrated this entire charade to hide their own shame, to erase me from their lives so they could go on living without the burden of their guilt. They didn't want to confront the truth of what they had done to me. They didn't want anyone to know that the golden child, the one they had protected and adored, was the true cause of their downfall. I walked out of that church with a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. My shoulders felt lighter. The weight that had been pressing on me for so long finally lifted. I wasn't there for forgiveness. I wasn't there to make them feel better. I was there to take back what was mine, to claim my truth. As the church bells rang, I realized something profound. Sometimes you have to die in their world to be reborn in your own. I didn't need to be their perfect daughter anymore. I didn't need to be the person they wanted me to be. I was me, alive, free, and ready to move forward, no longer bound by their lies. And as I stepped into the sunlight, I felt for the first time in a long time that I could finally breathe again. So, what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings about the story. Feel free to leave your comments or any feedback you have. It's always great to hear from you. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you can be the first to catch the next story. Your support truly helps me bring more exciting content your way. Thank you so much for sticking with me until the end of this journey. I really appreciate you being here, and I can't wait to share more stories with you soon.